So if I had to say three things that the Avazzia best does, is it basically does three things. It causes an increase in blood flow, better blood circulation, and improved lymphatic drainage. It restores normal electrodynamic properties of tissue. It normalizes cell signaling. And it increases neuropeptides. And pain, and that's very important in pain management and having senses of well-being. Next. Okay. So, on your body, in your skin, you have nerve cells that are receptors for touch, pressure, and pain, and they're called nociceptors. And this is what one looks like. If you look at the skin, this is from the University of Heidelberg. These white dots here, that's the dermal layer of the skin. Okay, in other words, you have skin cells that start at the basal layer and they actually grow out. And as they grow out, they die and they harden and they become cornified. So you have that cornified hard surface of the skin. Okay, that's your protectant. But right under this dermal layer in the subcutaneous, you have these cells that, and your skin is loaded with them. They're called nociceptors, and this is what one looks like. This is actually antibodies that are coated with a phosphorescent dye, and they attach to the nerve cell, and then they went ahead and did a histological section of it to show what it looked like under a dark field microscope with ultraviolet illumination. So these little critters, they sit under your skin and they collect information. They collect temperature, pressure, pain, and they relay them to the spinal cord. Okay, they are called the transmitters of noxious stimuli. They're also called primary sensory afferent C fibers. Now I'm going to translate that for you. Afferent means it's going to the brain. Efferent means it's coming from the brain. Okay, C fibers are a class of nerve fibers that we'll talk about in just a minute. Next. Okay, a C fiber, here you have different sizes of fibers in your body, nerve fibers, and some of them conduct signaling very fast. That action potential that I talked about, where the voltage changes in a cell and causes it to fire off, that's what a nociceptor does when it gets stimulated. It actually changes polarity. Some of the ions flow in, some of the ions flow out, and it makes a change in the voltage, and that actually forms like a tsunami wave. It goes up the nerve cell, and it's perceived in the brain as it goes up the spinal cord. And some of these are real fast transmitters. For instance, this real thick, it's called a real thick A fiber, has a myelin sheath around it like an insulation in an electrical cord. And it carries transmissions very fast. 20 meters per second is usually the speed for that. Okay, now when you touch a burning stove and you want to pull your hand off real fast, that's a response, motor response from a noxious stimuli. Okay, you pull it off real fast. That's what a A fiber does. It's a motor fiber. It triggers a muscle response extremely quickly. Okay, some of these smaller fibers. This one is a beta fiber. It's a little smaller. It's still involved. It's an actual sensory fiber and smaller fibers. And then finally we have a C fiber, which is a very slow. Each one of these, as the diameter decreases, the speed slows down as well. Okay? Next. So alpha fibers carry information related to proprioception. That's where your muscles are in space and time. It basically tells you where your feet are. It tells you where your hands are. People who are gymnasts that like to do flips have really well-developed proprioception. People who are old and stumble and fall have very bad proprioception, and that's why they fall, because those fibers are basically degenerative or dysfunctional. Beta fibers carry information related to touch. That's the motor fibers I was actually talking about when you touch the stove and you get this sharp knife pain. They're very fast, sharp pain fibers and touch fibers. And then A delta fibers carry information related to pain and temperature. And finally, C fibers, pain, temperature, and itch and pressure. Okay. Now, the difference between these is a C fiber is responsible for that real slow throbbing pain. Okay. The big fat fibers like the A fibers are responsible for that sharp knife-like pain. So C fibers, when you have that burning pain that goes on for hours and hours and hours, those are C fibers that are transmitting the signal, and they're transmitting them from the nociceptor in the skin. There are also nociceptors in other parts, or nerve endings in other parts of the body, like I'll give you an example, like bone. The periosteal covering of the bones, that's why when you get kicked in the shins, it hurts like crazy, because underneath that periosteum there are loaded tons of nociceptors, pain receptors. Okay, so there's various parts of the body that are rich. Probably the skin is the richest or the densest as far as C fibers or nociceptors. Okay.